Yeah, on the economics, just to defend Patchy on this curve, because I'm afraid that is the state of the art, and I'm not an economist, so the working group 3 chair gave me the job of coordinating and getting the economists to agree over this. I survived, but you know, it's quite clear that the economic community has very, very divergent views about this, actually. So someone like Patchy is stuck with that finding. Having said that, though, there are several economic models which we reviewed at the time and more published since, which actually show that climate policy increases the rate of economic growth. There's one by Ottmar Edenhofer, who's now a professor at PIC, but now the Working Group 3 chair, and Terry Barker at Oxford. They have these endogenous growth models which grow, you know, from the internal economic assumptions about labour and so on, and technology, and their climate policies produce very rapid growth rates in economic terms. We're at the infancy of being able to quantify the climate damages. You see this debate between Nordhaus, Bill Nordhaus and Stern over this question. So yeah, I think there is an issue there that needs to be communicated, but the underlying science remains quite ambiguous because of the understandings in the community of economists are so different about the problem.
Mm-hmm. Sara, briefly?
Just very briefly, I'm an economist also, and I would say that the models are just terrible. They're just really not acceptable at all. No, because they don't. They basically are based primarily on previous history. That's the way models tend to be developed in economics. And one of the things that they particularly do not have is addressing the issue of resilience. They don't model resilience. And a lot of our response, we didn't even talk about adaptation today, which of course is hugely important. We need to adapt in ways that also mitigate. But the issue is, well, how are we going to put in place things so that our economy is not so sensitive to the shocks that are going to repeatedly come from the consequences of climate change? And I think most of the economists are still just, haven't started asking the critical things that need to be done.
I just want to say that even Bill Nordhaus lists climate change as one of the 2 most important issues for the 21st century.
Yeah, you know, I think economists are increasingly seeing that. Now we just need to get everyone else to see it. So let me see. Back in the back.
Hi, Dawn Moncrief with Farm and Well-Fed World. And I wanted to say it's good to hear increased attention being given to the role of reduced meat consumption in helping global warming, especially with the significant health impacts it could have in the U.S. And I'm wondering if countries, during the negotiations, if they are reducing meat consumption, if that's going to be able to count towards lower emissions, or if it's mainly going to be focused on science and technology changes.
Bill may know, you two may be able to speak
Well,
more to the specifics negotiation. But
I can give a technocratic answer, which is that if a country is reporting its emissions and it reduces meat consumption, then its emissions will go down. Yeah. So it will get rewarded for that. Or if it changes from, let's say, more greenhouse gas intensive, you know, crop-based livestock growth to more range-fed livestock patterns, then that will also reduce emissions and so on. Yeah. So yes, there is a reward, but it's unlikely to be specifically addressed in the negotiation.
Let me just add, too, that one of the difficulties here is that we have much better data on fossil fuel consumption than we have on land use changes. So that one of the difficulties here, and it's actually a stimulus, I think, to economically and certainly educationally and academically, is we need more scientists, more young people figuring out how to inventory the emissions that come out of land use changes, as well as emissions of gases other than carbon dioxide.
It also raises the point that we really need a climate change framework that values any kind of emission reduction from any kind of source. That's what
so as a biologist, I can't resist pointing out that the greenhouse gases that come out of the front end of the cow are more important than those come out of the back.
Thank you, Tom. Moving quickly.
Just a short comment. My name is Gary Brosh. I'm a photojournalist. I've written a book on climate change and also co-authored a book for middle school kids about climate science. So we're trying, as a non-scientist, to get more people involved. I want to let everybody know, if you don't, that there actually is quite a large movement of climate literacy. You can get to it now through the NOAA website, the educational part of NOAA, and there are guidelines in there and definitions, and there's a whole new framework coming out about what should people know about climate. how should they be taught it, and of course a heavy involvement with schools. And one of the main principles is that yes, people can understand what's happening, and when they do, they will probably want to take action and should be helped in taking action. So.
Great. Thank you very much. Bonnie Biagini?
Thank you, Bob. Good to see you again. My name is Bonnie Biagini. I work at the Global Environment Facility. Two observations. One, I'm glad really that the issue of adaptation was brought in. Better late than never. And as a follow-up to what Alan Miller said, it's really fundamental to remember that has been assessed, even if roughly, that the damages of the impacts of climate change has been assessed, for example, in a recent publication of the UNFCCC Secretariat, sorry for the acronym, United Nations Convention on Climate Change, right. About 40 to 100 billion a year. So obviously will impact the economies of the countries and you know, on small island states and most vulnerable countries, several percentages of their GDP. So I think probably you know, a correction of that slide and saying that actually the GDP would change positively in adopting adaptation policies that would reduce the impact, the cost of the impacts of climate change. I guess it was a matter of coordination between Working Group 1, the science of climate change, Working Group 3, the economics, and Working Group 2 of the IPCC, that is the impacts of climate change, where there was the cost of the impacts, and you know, coordination and communication. But the issue of adaptation is huge and has to be put hand in hand to mitigation, right. And that's what in the convention will happen in Copenhagen. And a quick observation, but I can't help. In a previous life, myself, Bill Hare, and Chris Flaving, we were in Rio. We were at COP1. COP1, 14 COPs ago, we had the first IPCC assessment report where practically the basics of the science was there. There were all the political benchmarks to make an agreement. It's 14 COPs later. We should really give a standing ovation to the government of Denmark. No delays. An agreement must be made because the science is clear. The political agreement can be made. And we really stand for the government of Denmark because that has to be achieved. If it's not achieved, the problem will be there. Human lives will be threatened, we'll be there again, and we'll have to make another agreement again, you know, no matter what happens in Copenhagen. But this agreement, 14 COPs later, has to be made. Thank you.
Thanks, Bonnie. We're out of time, I'm afraid. I'd love to. This is a great panel, and it's been a great discussion. I'd like to keep on going. I do just want to say in defense of the issue of adaptation and resilience that it was a theme, an important theme of the report. We took the view that one doesn't need and one indeed cannot choose between emissions mitigation and adaptation. They both have to be pursued with equal fervor and simultaneously for the next century to come. And there is a full chapter on resilience and adaptation. Unfortunately, none of the authors are here, but it was brought into Bill's chapter, Sarah's chapter, Tom's work as well, and my own chapter at the end of the book. So I would encourage you all, obviously, to take inspiration from this great discussion and go on to read the book. And I want to thank everyone again very much for being with us this afternoon. Thank you all.